Hi guys, I'm Amy. I'm a digital product designer from Make Rain. I've got about 5 years experience at this point, mostly sitting within fintech and e-commerce. And like Iggy said, I like to take some slow hobbies, so baking, gardening, busy growing butternuts at the moment. That's me. T, go for it.
Thanks, Ames. Thanks, Iggy, also for setting this up for us. Yeah, I'm also a senior designer at Make Rain. I'm very passionate, obviously, about design and all things design and creativity. And I'm also the design system manager for our team. So, very passionate about that as well. I have 3 rescue dogs at home, which keep me very busy, and a little bunny rabbit. So, yeah, I love animals and I love being outside and yeah, exploring nature and exercising. Cool.
Fantastic. We have shared the presentation, so we should be all set to go. Fantastic. Guys, we really hope this presentation, we put a lot of love and time into it. We've tried to make it as accommodating for the industry as possible. So we hope that this is super valuable for everyone. I think let's get started. Awesome. Uh, so the chat that we're going to do today is really just about doing what AI can't. We wanted to do a little bit of a case study on a project that we've been working on recently with a hypothetical client. We wanted to give you some practical examples, and we wanted to talk about that relationship between AI and the human element.
Cool. So I think we can just jump right in and address the big AI shaped elephant in the room, or the elephant shaped AI in the room. I think we can all relate to this GIF here when we look at the AI ecosystem right now. It was kind of very exciting in the beginning, and now we're all like, what on earth do we do with all of this? We can all agree that AI is absolutely everywhere right now. It's all over LinkedIn. It's even in the LinkedIn comments at this point. It's all over the TED Talks. It's in the news. Your family members will probably bring it up at the Christmas table this year. And it's become an impossible thing to hide from. We recognize also that it's been a little bit overworked as a topic, and we're feeling a little bit fatigued about the AI world right now. I think we can all relate to this feeling of, being super excited about what's happening to kind of feeling this a little bit of overwhelm and dread as to, okay, now we've got to kind of keep up with everything that's changing because we're involved, especially in the tech world. So, throughout this talk, we're not going to promise to not talk about AI, although this talk is focused on what humans can do and where AI can't really, add as much value as humans do. We will be addressing AI. We do use AI as a tool throughout our processes. So this talk is kind of focusing on where we're finding value with AI and where we're finding value in the human elements as well. So we wanted to take a step back and explore realistically what the relationships between humans and AI actually looks like, where we're finding value, where we feel like we as a team have wasted our time, and more importantly, what is still uniquely human about our processes in design. How do we also future proof a complex product? That's a question that we ourselves as a team asked ourselves quite often throughout this process, but also how do we future proof ourselves as designers and our careers? We'll do that by talking you through a hypothetical case study of a very real project that Amy and myself worked on together with our team. And we're hoping this addresses some of the anxiety that a lot of our juniors are facing, and let's be honest, the rest of us in the industry too. We'll do that by showcasing through storytelling what AI actually can't be, which is human. We'll unpack the problems that needed a unique human perspective, some creative disruption, and deep connection, which is something that AI cannot do right now, at least. What we're going to do is we'll talk you through the wicked problem that we faced as a team. We faced this with our client, with our technical partners, and some of the human elements to that problem. Once we've unpacked the wicked problem, we'll take you through the human solutions that we found, so places where AI cannot get in the way. After that, we'll take you through how we planned to future-proof and scale our solutions.
I think what we'll do, but like getting started, is we'll take you through our hypothetical client. So this is Dream Scoops and Slumber. This is the company we were hired by. It is a proud retailer of ice creams and mattresses. Your first question, of course, will be why ice creams and why mattresses and why those two things together. We asked the same question, but that's not the problem we're here to solve today. Dream Scoops and Slumber had very successfully for years sold ice cream and mattresses to the South African consumer base and had an e-commerce app and website that were doing quite well. They were considered the leader in quality and they had a solid, loyal customer base. They had two distinct customer groups. So, one who wanted to buy ice cream and get it delivered fast before it melted on the same day. And the other group, who were interested in buying mattresses online, this was a group obviously that were expecting to spend a little bit more money, and they were willing to wait a little bit longer for their delivery expectation time. Dream Scoops and Slumber had asked us to reimagine their online experience to help them plan for the future of e-commerce, so push them forward towards the future. And this included a complete redesign of their experience to bring their different product ranges together and encourage a little cross shopping and cross sell shopping. So those who were interested in ice cream were maybe browsing mattresses more and vice versa. We also found that as we unpacked the project, there were smaller unspoken requirements that had come up. And I think these are things that we've all dealt with in a world of e-commerce. So merchandisers wanted an experience that sold more product, obviously. Marketing wanted more space to market. Dev teams wanted a design solution that didn't require cross-team collaboration. And everyone in the company had their feedback on what they thought the best solution for the problem would be and what the best experience for the problem should be.
Cool. So let's get to the wicked problem. And I'd like to start off with a little definition as to what is a wicked problem. So I thought this illustration depicted it really well. I definitely relate to these little characters in the slide. So a wicked problem is a complex, persistent social or cultural problem that is difficult or impossible to solve definitively due to its interconnected nature, incomplete knowledge, and conflicting stakeholder values. And I think Amy can attest to that we were definitely feeling this kind of web of interconnected problems kind of overarching our design team as we tackled this brief that we received from the business. Everyone was kind of on different ends of this problem and we had to unravel it all together. So bear with us while we kind of make sense of this problem to you. So buckle up, it's a little bit of a journey. So the business basically had been around for such a long time. They operated a lot like a corporate. Our team kind of terms them as a big, slow-moving giant. They weren't able to move quickly or with agility. The brief we received was to do one big push forward that set themselves up for success. This could already be setting off some alarm bells in your minds because that methodology isn't really what we're used to working with when we think about working in agile tech companies or design thinking industries. We often are used to working iteratively in fast sprints and constantly improving. Now the business have given us this brief of design our digital store of the future, a complete overhaul of what we currently have and set ourselves up for the future. And as a design team, we kind of looked at this brief and we were like, well, where do we even start with this? Because our foundations were so kind of fractured already. We didn't even have the basics right. Now we need to step into the future. What do we even do to begin? So both the structural mentality of the organization and its technical architecture had a lot of potential for change and growth. But we as the design team obviously had a very specific mandate and limited but growing sphere of influence in the business. It reminded us that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but more often than not closest to the resources or the power. So our little team of designers was caught in a crossfire of multiple things happening within the industry and also within the business. Firstly, we were facing a lot of pressure in the industry as designers and as a business. As product designers, we had to recognize other influences and the pressures of the landscape. The biggest of which was the pressure from our competitors. They were stealing our market share by selling gelato at way cheaper prices. They had a lot faster digital experiences, and their marketing was just so snappy and on point. People on social media were starting to notice this disparity between us and our competitors, and they were calling us out online. And it made our brand look a little bit bad and impacted how our users started to see us. So the business was facing a lot of pressure in that way, and we could see how our stakeholders were very frustrated with this current situation. There's also a crux of working in digital. As designers, we have to constantly keep up because we are technically the subject matter experts. We need to recognize that the tech space moves super fast. Every other day, there's a new tool or a new workflow that comes out, and we need to stay on top of it. I mean, let's be honest, OpenAI will probably release a new model by the end of our presentation. We were also dealing with a very outdated legacy architecture. We couldn't easily break and rebuild things or challenge the norm because everything in our architecture was interconnected. Our foundations were very outdated. Every tiny change that our stakeholders requested required a massive overhaul, new releases, and we were falling way behind with massive technical debt. For example, there was a brief that came in. Our stakeholders asked to add a flavor of the week flash on some of our ice cream product listing pages, and that required a whole overhaul into the architecture and new releases. Or, for example, we wanted to split out the different mattress sizes on our product listing pages by size rather than going into the PDP to view the different sizes. That required a complete redesign and reinterrogation. So our stakeholders were feeling very frustrated and tired of this, long process to get anything happening. We also had a bit of a wagile process going on. If you don't know what that is, it's waterfall dressed in agile clothing. That required a lot of double diamond processes, multiple rounds of stakeholders review, QA, releases, re-releases, bug checks. We were falling way behind. Our dev teams were also organized into different sections of the e-commerce journey. So we had a team that focused on the search experience or a team that focused on the checkout experience. And that wasn't necessarily a problem because those teams were very involved in that architecture and the tech in that section of the experience. But what became a bit of a problem was it was hard for teams to consider the end-to-end user journey, whereas as the design team, we held the context of that entire journey. Teams also weren't collaborating and cross-collaborating with one another, so there became a lot of silos within those different parts of the e-commerce funnel.
When it came down to the human systems at the start of the project, it was really easy for us to see that there was a bit of a lack of trust with our stakeholders, not in us personally, but in the process, in the role, in the years of technical debt that had started to build up, that had promised features, but only ever really given MVPs. So many of the times we were working with stakeholders who had years of knowledge and experience in their roles in retail, but not a ton of experience working with an online team and how different that digital comparison is to traditional structures. Our roles were also not super clear, although it might be better to say that the expanding role of a product designer, that we'll talk a bit more about the end, had mismatched kind of alignments with what was the expectation within the business. And that often led to a lot of crossover when it came to roles, responsibility, racy diagrams, and things like that. Our stakeholders weren't sure if we were there to make the app prettier, if we were there to tell them things about their users that they already knew, or if we were there to promise on features that we'd never deliver. I think we also have to admit as a team that we had our own assumptions as well. And I think we kind of readily admit that. When stakeholders come to you and talk as if they're users and start handing out lists of features that they want to see or name dropping competitors that they want to emulate, a bit of a wall goes up as product designers. We tend to get quite defensive. We start to defend our process because we're the experts. You should be coming to us with problems, not solutions. We are the subject matter experts in this space. And, what does marketing or merchandising or anyone else have to say about the user experience process? It's something we own. And I think we had to recognize that those walls were going up pretty quickly in the beginning. And it's something that kind of happens almost as a knee-jerk reaction sometimes as product designers.
So now let's get into the part where AI can go take a little seat in the corner for a while and think about what it's done. This is the part that AI cannot do yet, at least. So I'm sure all of the designers in the room will relate to this experience. You're reviewing a beautiful design that you've worked on for ages, and a stakeholder or someone pipes up and says, "Well, I'm not a designer, but," and you immediately turn into Justin Timberlake and you're like, okay. No one ever really asks us designers what we think, do they? And I think it is a very frustrating experience. You know, we're supposed to be the experts in the field, and everyone seems to have an opinion on the work that we do. I think also design is quite a subjective experience. You know, obviously everyone has their own experiences, and we are in the industry of user experience. So naturally, everyone's going to have a subjective experience and subjective feedback. So oftentimes, I think as designers, we need to learn to let go of our ego a little bit and just acknowledge that everyone is going to have an opinion, because it is a space where everyone does have an opinion because everyone has their own experience. Sometimes also as designers, we need to admit that we don't know everything. We don't have all the answers. And that takes a bit of an ego death as well, because we like to think of ourselves obviously as the experts. And, you know, we've been hired to do this job and we should know everything. It comes down to that concept of the designer as the savior of the business. And, you know, we need to touch all parts of the experience because we've been hired to solve all the problems. And we can't solve all the problems because we don't know all of the problems and we don't have all the answers sometimes. And oftentimes there are multiple solutions to a problem where we might find a solution, you know, someone along the line further down in the business that doesn't even interact with the design might have a completely different solution to the very same problem that we had never considered before. So our team was experiencing this dichotomy a lot. We had to actually take a big step back, take a pause, and realize there's actually no shortage of great ideas in any company. But the role of design is in turning them into something tangible. And that's where we add a lot of value. So our problem came down to a lot of different people in the ecosystem and different ways of communicating. We had very mixed expressions. Our team was a team of visual thinkers. We were able to imagine and think on the fly, draw scamps, work in Figma very fast. Whereas our stakeholders were very logical, number-oriented people, or they were verbal people working in marketing and merchandising, thinking about product and strategy and promotion. And a lot of what we were saying and a lot of what they were saying was getting missed. We were talking around each other in circles and vice versa. Oftentimes, when there's mixed expressions involved, we have a lack of a common language. The solution to this was we needed to get onto the same page and find a common ground to be able to discuss our problems together in a more meaningful way. We also had to acknowledge there was missing understanding around certain terminology and ways of expressing our opinions in a way that our stakeholders could unpack, and also in a way that we could unpack. For example, our team was talking about chips and toast messages and hamburger menus, and our stakeholders were looking at us like, "But we sell ice cream. What are you talking about?" So when there's a lack of a common language, you need to find a way of communicating that allows people to expand. That is when their creative genius will emerge. Our work sometimes focuses clients' wants over people's needs. And the role of designers sometimes isn't in charge of solving problems or making things, but rather responsible for enabling others to find their own solutions. Sometimes we get client feedback, we'll show them a design, and their gut reaction instantly will be like, "I hate it." And then we'll be like, "Why? Why do you hate it? Please tell us." And they can't say why. And that's a very frustrating experience. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. And oftentimes that comes down to they didn't agree with the way we fundamentally solved their problem. So we were getting a lot of that. And we needed to actually create a safe space, not to impose our expert knowledge, but rather facilitate the space where people can share their ideas and problems in a safe and open way. We started facilitating conversations and creating environments where the people closest to the problem were also the people closest to the power. It brings up that concept of participatory design or co-design, which is coming up a lot recently. And that's that very happy middle ground between being a pixel pusher and doing everything your client asks for, no questions asked, to being this untouchable, godlike designer who thinks they know everything and mic drops their design handover thinking they've solved the problem. It's about designing with your client and not for them. We also had an issue with mixed skill sets. So our stakeholders were used to working with spreadsheets and numbers and tangible products. They were very used to the in-store retail experience and less accustomed to the digital world of apps and social media. Our team was moving a million miles ahead in a Figma file that felt very unnatural to them. And we were all getting a little bit lost in our own disparate realms. We were actually two pieces of the same puzzle. We both knew our users really, really well, but we had completely different contexts of those users. So it came down to a lack of a common medium. We needed to find a shared medium to communicate our problems and ideas more effectively. We needed to find a medium where our stakeholders and ourselves felt fluid, natural, and proficient, and allowed them to steer the work from there. This reminds me of that quote by Marshall McLuhan, "The medium is the message." In our case, the medium wasn't the software or the code. The medium was us, our teams, our silos, our communication issues. Because our organization, our medium, was so fractured, the product, our message, became fractured as a result. But our customers don't see our organization chart or our communication structures. They experience a disjointed journey. Organizations that design systems are limited to create experiences that reflect their communication structures. And what we realized was we had to fix the human connection in order to fix the technical ones. Our solution was in finding our own ways of collaborating that might not necessarily be conventional. So if an AI can propose a new system, it cannot build trust or navigate stakeholders. Our priority came to building trust by walking hand in hand with our stakeholders through our entire end-to-end customer journey in a way that felt more natural to all of us. There's this misconception that good collaboration should feel like a flow state, easy and harmonious, everyone's getting along, we're solving problems. But quickly we learned the truth in the saying, great art happens when something is pushed against. It was not very easy to collaborate. And our solution wasn't actually to smooth things over, but rather lean into that friction. We decided to implement a weekly in-person workshop where every Tuesday we locked ourselves in a room with our stakeholders for an hour and we just spoke about our issues. Kind of like therapy, but a lot more uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie, some of these sessions were absolutely grueling. I think it might have also been because the sessions were over lunchtime and we were all talking about ice cream, which made us extremely hangry. But we just decided to surrender ourselves to the process and leave everything in that boardroom. As one of our directors at Make Rain would say, don't be afraid to fail fast. And that's what we did. We decided to get uncomfortable with the discomfort. And a strange thing happened. By staying in the room and refusing to avoid the conflict, the dynamic started to shift. It happened very slowly at first and then all at once. We found common ground in very simple things like printing out our visual references. Paper felt a lot safer and more objective than using a screen. We also had a data epiphany, realizing that our arguments weren't actually about personal taste, but rather about missing information that we didn't have. We also, as a design team, learned to let go of our egos a little bit. Finally agreeing to cut features that we absolutely loved and we were holding on way too tightly to. For example, we designed these absolutely gorgeous filter icons of different ice cream types for our PLP filters. And it looked beautiful from a design perspective, and I'm sure our customers would have loved it. But from a business perspective, it would have been a logistical and management nightmare to maintain. So we decided to cut it. We went from dreading any review with them to having real empathy and understanding for the challenges we faced on both sides, and we became true allies because of it. Once focus shifted off of us and we got out of the way of shielding all the problems of the ecosystem, the holes and the gaps in our processes started to show. So next time someone pipes up and says, well, I'm not a designer, but firstly, just take a deep breath, okay? And let's just pay attention because there might be some small nuggets that are really helpful in that answer. There's also a lot of fight over ownership in the UX and customer experience space and the product space. Who gets to own the experience? And I think there is a lot of shared ownership because we don't have all the solutions and we can't be everywhere at once. Alignment also is more often than not an emotional experience. And we need to learn how to partner across the areas of the business in order to get alignment.
While AI can't do the management of stakeholder chaos, there are some things that it's really good at doing. And there were some points in the journey that we really wanted to use it to make sure that we were being super efficient. I think that came in really well in this topic, which is future proofing. We wanted to make sure that whatever we were designing, whatever systems and processes, as well as the designs themselves, weren't going to be the next problem we had to face in 5 years and become part of another legacy system. What that looked like was breaking it down kind of into three really key parts of managing the process: the research, talking to our users and making sure that we were building for the future, the infrastructure, making sure that what we were building on was solid ground, and the design system, making sure that the system we were setting up for ourselves meant that we could work faster in the future than we were working right now. When it came to the research, we realized that we were having these important meetings in boardrooms and we were having these Tuesday therapy sessions, and it was a lot of decision making that was happening in these sessions. But someone that wasn't at the table when we were having these discussions was our users. We often than not, as product designers, want to represent our users, but in this case, we found that actually a lot of the answers were sitting outside that room and outside the building. And rather than just representing our users, we wanted to make sure that we could facilitate a conversation and create spaces where others could share their insights and solutions. So it wasn't just us representing the users, but that we all had ownership over customer experience. This was a core insight that we garnered from this process, from these collaborative discussions. As custodians of the design thinking system, I think we all know that you need to speak to users in order to produce really great products. But I don't think as a team we'd realize how much those research discussions were actually going to help us in speaking to our colleagues and our partners within the business. It really helped to kind of push those conversations forward in multiple different ways. And I don't think we realized that that value was there as well. When we started moving from discussions of I think this is what I think users will do this, to you and users might, to something more constructive like we know now from testing or we found out, we gained a lot of credibility with that room. So the people in the room were much more likely to listen, and we could open their eyes of our stakeholders to the direct impact of design changes and user experience. We could say, let's do X, we could go and test it, and then we can show them the results of that testing to show them the effects of the decisions that they've made, which also helped them to feel like they had an impact, but also helped them to feel the importance of that impact within the experience. When our stakeholders started asking us questions about how users might interact with a particular component on a page, or what was the mindset of a late night shopper, we started to beam with pride. We were so excited. We could take those questions and we could go and test again, or we could go continue testing. And we could get answers to those questions. And that helped us build trust with them in the process, because it proved to them that we were here to listen to them and work with them, and not just dismiss their ideas to the parking lot as we sometimes do. What that looked like was, at the end of the project, we had conducted over 50 sessions with users, speaking to different user types about features and functionality, how they use the digital experience today, what they expected of the future, what was their experience with certain elements, and then, of course, doing some usability testing on features, flows, and components. We tested different tools like Gemini, ChatGPT, and Otter AI at the same time, simultaneously, to find which was the best result, and then we were able to drop the ones that weren't helpful. We tested with different tools, and we found that we could use the tools really well as note takers to analyze large sets of data and feedback, and then to summarize that feedback to our stakeholders to keep them in the loop without taking up too much of our time constantly checking in. So this became a massive opportunity for our team to learn how to use these tools in a very practical way. So it was a lot of fun to experiment and see what worked. In some cases, Theresa was using Gemini when I was using ChatGPT, and we would compare notes and see which one was more effective. So it was a really fun learning opportunity for us as well, I think. We then were able to kind of take those notes, like I said, and summarize them to send to our stakeholders. In one case, we were able to challenge a massive business assumption, and this was a really, I think, key moment for us in the project, where our colleagues were really concerned that navigation was a really a big issue for our customers in the app. And what they were specifically worried about was that navigation was stopping our users from spending more time in the app browsing, and that they were getting frustrated and leaving. They had prioritized navigation as being the number one concern that we needed to fix in the new world. We were then able to take AI and analyze and break down thousands of App Store comments from the last 12 months to do some problem validation and see what the biggest complaints were. What we quickly found out was that actually performance issues were much more of a headache to our customers than navigational issues ever were. It doesn't mean we didn't need to address the navigational issues, but from a priority perspective, we were able to make the case without sounding combative to reprioritize the performance issues over the navigational issues. And this is great when you're working in a team that you really want to have a long-term relationship with without looking combative. You don't want to look like you're fighting, and there's no pressure or pushing against kind of the disagreements because you have the data to back up what you're saying. We also knew at the start of the project that there would always be two distinct user types: those who were browsing, so what we call the discoverability user, and those who are on a mission to find something. We call those the findability users. And we knew that we would have those two user types. I think what we learned along the way that was really fantastic is just how much those users were interchanging or swapping those journeys. How a user who'd come to find something very specific would get inspired by marketing and start to browse other topics, sometimes even crossing over from ice cream to mattresses and cross-pollinating. This was something we were really interested in, and it was a big learning for us because it surprised us. It meant that when we designed, we could design with a much more integrated journey and with flexibility. When we paired this with something like personalization, we could create a more human way to shop that was more natural to our customers. Another example of an insight that we learned when we did this user testing was around how much to explain to our users. So our colleagues and our stakeholders were really concerned because we had a little bit more of an older user base in some cases, especially on the mattress side of things. They were worried that things needed to be explained quite a lot. And what this led to was very heavy copy, a lot of heavy call to actions, over explaining things along the way. And it caused quite a hiccup in the customer experience because it's not something that you want to overburden your customers with. What we were really surprised to find, even surprising to us, was that when we did usability testing, we found that even our non-tech savvy customers, when we asked them to complete a task, they did it really intuitively. They had great experience with other online retailers, and that meant that they could transfer a lot of those experiences. And we could go back to our stakeholders with a lot of confidence and redesign and say, our users know what they're doing. They're smart, they're intuitive, and they're tech savvy. And we could say that with a lot of confidence because we tested it. We could also expose our stakeholders to some of those tests so they could gain that confidence themselves. And this meant that we could make really distinct design decisions about not over explaining, reducing copy, making things simpler and easier, especially when it came to things like repeat purchases. We also had a really wonderful experience that I encourage kind of everyone to do, which was we got to spend some time in the physical stores. We also then get to spend time with our support team, learning more about what the biggest concerns were that were coming through the support funnel. The support team, as most of us will know, is the heart of a business. They'll be able to tell you exactly what your problems are and in what quantities. They speak to users every single day. And through that experience, spending time with the support team, we were able to hear from people like a mother trying to get her son an ice cream cake for his 17th birthday, but struggling to get it delivered. A senior couple who were doing most of their shopping online after COVID-19 because they didn't want to go to the malls. A young executive who'd injured her back and couldn't leave the house, but she still wanted a new mattress delivered because she just had surgery and wanted it to be delivered to her house. And lastly, a breastfeeding mom who was trying to do online shopping in her one hand while feeding her baby in her other and trying to get her ice cream craving as well. And these were massively insightful to learn the stories of our users. While we were there, we were using AI in these cases to help increase our efficiency and speed up our process. We were there to capture the human stories, and we were there to make sure that we could empathize with our users. As customer experience professionals, we came into this project, this relationship, ready to take ownership of customer experience. It's ours, it's our thing. We own that. But by sharing that customer feedback, we had immense value in the collaboration process. And it meant that we became better partners and better designers when we shared that feedback with our stakeholders very openly. We started getting really fun requests for people to join our playbacks. So stakeholders who weren't directly involved in the project wanted to know more about our users, so they wanted to join our sessions. And we even started a user experience research Slack channel where anyone from the company could come and join, and they could see what we'd learned about our customers, and they could share too. We got to a point where other people were sharing their customer insights, not just us, and it became a shared collaborative experience, which was fantastic. Next, we take a look at the infrastructure.
So we can't really talk about digital experience without talking about the back end. I know as designers, this isn't really where we feel the most confident and we feel a bit out of our depths. But I think it is important to understand the context of the back end architecture, at least at a high level, because it gives us an idea of what's possible and what's not. So during this time that we were working on this project, the business was on a separate parallel mission to overhaul our backend architecture in order to make sure it was future fit. The business had made the decision to move away from a monolithic structure, which is basically where the entire application is built as a single indivisible program, where all of the parts of the experience are tightly interconnected and deployed as one unified piece of software. They were deciding to move from monolithic to a more composable architecture. There's this new term, composable commerce, that's going around, and it's basically a modern approach to building digital commerce platforms by selecting and combining independent best of breed technologies into a unique and highly tailored solution that's fit for that personal business. Unlike a traditional all in one monolith, it leverages a modular architecture that provides businesses with a lot more flexibility and scalability and allows them to adapt easier to market changes. There is also a lot of opportunity here where AI can plug into these individual technologies and improve the experiences. If we had to provide a visual, a monolithic architecture, you can think of it like a fish tank. If you want to put something in the water, you can't do that without affecting everything else in the ecosystem. Whereas a composable architecture is more like a box of Legos. You can put things in and take things out, and it doesn't necessarily cause as much of an effect on everything else. This change also linked perfectly with where our users were. So if you remember in our research, there was a lot of user demand for more flexible experiences and the ability to shop like a human. And this composable architecture allowed us to do that. We implemented a new content management system, a personalization engine, a new search. And this also really supported the business's needs to connect more with our customers and keep up with the pace of the digital landscape. So our research findings directly validated the need to shift to a new architecture, which was quite interesting because we were working in parallel. So we didn't actually know what the other was doing. And it was kind of not necessarily a happy accident, but it showed that we were on the right path. And it's the perfect example of meeting our users exactly where they are. So now that we've spoken about the back end, we had to look at making sure the front end was future fit as well. So there's nothing more human than the things we create and nothing more empowering than the tools that we use to do that. And this idea is central to everything we're discussing today. It's that inherent link between human creativity and the technologies that enable that. I think we can all agree that design and tech are having a huge moment right now. And it's a moment that we as designers and the design community are shaping. The AI landscape of the past few months has been an absolute roller coaster. Tech is evolving so rapidly, but we aren't just adapting to these changes, we're getting to shape them. And in a world that's changing so fast, we kept asking ourselves this question: how do we avoid designing the next legacy system? And the answer to that is in the system itself. I don't just mean any system, I'm talking about all of our favorite systems, design systems. Where there are systems in place, we are able to automate. We can automate our decisions. The system we use as a design team became the missing link for our business to unlock longevity and scalability. By automating the simple choices like color, padding, components, we allowed our human designers and also our engineers to focus their human originality and imagination on the more complex, unique, high-value user problems. It became a future-proofing mechanism for the age of AI. So, as everything in this world is changing with AI, design systems are no different. The role of design systems are expanding. They're no longer a static spec sheet that outlines rigid rules that always need to be broken in order to allow for adaptability and nuance. In this AI world, design systems become a mechanism that deliver craft at scale, allowing for flexibility and automation using AI. All AI needs is clean, organized, rule driven source of truth, which is crafted by humans to be an effective assistant in turning our designs into code. So, designing in the age of AI means designing for intelligence. Our design system became the training data and guardrails for generative design and code tools to consume. The humans added the semantic meaning to our components and patterns, which told AI why something was used, when it's appropriate, and how it should adapt. Human ingenuity becomes the key to achieving consistency and quality at scale in this ever shifting tech landscape that we find ourselves in. Our team is very excited about this because we're currently stress testing our system and going through this process with our technical partners. So we've seen that the gap between the design files and the live product code base causes a lot of friction between design and development. There's a lot of rework, there's a lot of divergence. It's a constant challenge for not only our team, but I'm sure a lot of other teams out there. And we're noticing that Figma can allow the design system to hold the context of a business's code base, making it less of a spec sheet and more of an active part of the build environment. Our design decisions are now closer to the code than ever before, which means we have higher quality technical output, less technical debt, and faster time to market. Our responsibility as designers is to understand how our systems are consumed as development packages. So, through this journey with our stakeholders, we're seeing that design systems no longer only serve design, but also built for the whole product teams with all of their overlaps and merging ideas and merging areas of experience. Not only design systems become not only a design tool, but rather a broader business asset. And that is how we sold the system to business. We've persuaded the business to invest in a design system by positioning it as a process investment. It doesn't just become a design aesthetic tool, but becomes part of the business's processes. Again, this was a snap decision or seemingly snap decision that took years in the making. It took us all a while to admit that this was a very real need and a solution to a problem. And we found the perfect time to introduce it when the business was feeling a lot of this tension. And that moment was a commitment to technical maturity. The system enables cross functional team collaboration, sets a standard for how we like to show up as a brand online, and ensured our users were experiencing the same quality across all of our digital touchpoints.
As we come towards the end of our talk, we want to start going back to our original question, which is, in a world of AI, how do you future proof not just a complex product, but also a team, your career, and the industry as product design? As designers, we tend to find that we feel like we sit slightly apart from the business, that we've got a clear mandate with our own customer, to own customer experience. What we found in this process and through the project that we worked on end to end, we found that realistically, especially when you're moving very fast, we are building the boat while we're sailing it. And the sad news is we're all in the boat with everyone else. I think we like to use that expression of talking about other people in the business and we're separate from them, but we are in the boat with them. We've got an oar and we are very much included in the participation process. The quality of our experience is not just shaped by what we design, but how we collaborate, what we decide, and how we run the work. We are not just capable and taking ownership of the design itself, but the processes around it are also becoming part of our responsibility. What we learned through this process is that that progress doesn't just come for waiting for someone else to fix the process. It comes from taking agency. So when we became more proactive, we leaned into collaboration, we widened our lens, and we went beyond our individual craft. We built stronger relationships. We were able to unlock better problem solving for our customers, and we delivered work that was more resilient and more aligned. In the end, this benefits our users and our customers anyway, because it means that we have a stronger product overall. In our view, this is kind of where product design is heading in a world of AI. We have certain tasks made faster and more accessible. We're able to get things done a lot faster. Because of that, our value shifts even further up the chain as designers. The future product designer is not just a maker of screens. They're a strategic partner. They shape direction, they clarify trade offs, they connect the dots between different disciplines, and they create conditions for great outcomes. And that's how we help our user. Less time spent polishing pixels in isolation, and more time thinking, guiding, and helping move the whole system forward, not just our individual craft. As we wrap up today, we just wanted to say thanks so much for spending time with us. We're really hoping that this was useful to everyone, that this helped to alleviate some anxiety possibly about the future of the industry, and that this also just gave everyone a really great example of what that relationship looks like right now with AI and the human, and where we're able to still provide a lot of value. Obviously, we can't speak for what the next 6 months to 6 years is going to look like. I think as humans, we're pretty bad at predicting the future. Otherwise, we'd all be in investing. But this is where we think the world is currently sitting right now, and possibly what the next kind of little bit of product design will look like. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Amy and Teresa. That was an awesome talk. Very relatable to me personally. Uh, um, yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome. Lots of great positive feedback, great comments. I think when you have the moment, go through the comments. But I'll jump into the questions for now. Um, so our first question is from. I'm gonna try to say the full name. Alman Manuel Panuero. It's probably South African accent, so it's Alman Manuel Januario. Um, what techniques or processes or even approach did you see to build trust with stakeholders with a project this complex?
I think that's a great question. T, I'm going to throw you under the bus.
Sure, I do have an answer to this. So, um, part of this process, we kind of realized that we needed to let go of always, or the need to be right. I think that is also kind of like a technique in conflict resolution. Like everyone wants to be right, and their opinion is the only opinion that matters. And I think we were oftentimes guilty of that as well. So we had to kind of just surrender and realize that there's different opinions, there's different views, and we don't have to always hold on to this feeling of like we need to win the argument. So that was definitely a technique or a process that we adopted. We also always, whenever we get kind of feedback that we're not happy about or that we don't align with, we look at it and say, well, is this a hill we want to die on? Like, are we gonna, fight in the trenches for our way, or is there, some compromise that we're happy to make here? So I think deciding when those moments are is really important. Deciding what you can let go of and what you're not willing to let go of. Is a very important part of the process. And it also builds trust because it makes your stakeholders realize you're not just this rigid wall that they have to always kind of bash through in order to get anything done. We become collaborators and partners in the experience, and that we see them and that we understand where they're coming from. And the answer isn't always, well, no, because what do you know? Well, that's basically just my take. I don't know, Ames, if you want to add.
I'll just add two things there. I think when it comes to that, the product this complex, what really helped me in the process was because it was such a big experience. We took that expression of how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. I think Theresa mentioned that we would sit every Tuesday, and when we sat on Tuesday, we would break it down into small elements. So every week we would look at one experience or one page, and we would break that down for our stakeholders, remembering that they've got 60 other things going on at the same time. So breaking it down, taking it piece by piece, and making progress like that was really helpful for us. I also think it's going to sound weird, but we really, and I think Iggy alluded to this in the beginning, we really found success in over communicating. We tended to find that our stakeholders, when they sat down in a room with us, they had 60 gazillion things else going on at the same time. So just never make an assumption that like we're done with this page, we've approved it, we're good to go. Always check back in and go, these are the decisions that we made. Because what it tells them is that one, you're on top of things, which has been really successful for us. And two, it makes sure that they are actively in that room paying attention with you on that content that you're looking at today. And that you're there to listen to what they have to say is important enough for you to take notes on. I know note taking is a bit of like a icky skill, but I just really found like over communicating to be really successful in this case, because you don't want to come back next Tuesday and feel like you weren't listening to what they said last week. It can put a real dent in the relationship. Cool.
Thank you. Um, so we'll move on to the next question, and this is from Maru. Um, so it reads, I often find that when I use Gen AI to help me summarize, it feels like I missed the opportunity to internalize the insights. Sort of like when copying homework from the smart kid. You're not really, Mario, you were copying. Um, you're not really taking it all in. I try to edit and rewrite it into my own words, make it my own and memorable. But I was wondering if you have any other advice or tools or tips to help close this gap.
T, do you mind if I take this one first?
Go for it.
I think we're all sitting with that same problem. What we ended up doing was we had a human note taker and we had an AI note taker in the same sessions, because at the point this was maybe June of this year, we weren't super confident in the note taking ability that we were leading on. And because we had that human element, we reviewed everything. So everything that came out of AI was looked at with human eyes to make sure that things were spot on, that we were internalizing the feedback, but that the people that were reviewing it were also the people that were in the session, so that we didn't miss anything, that there weren't any subtle nuances or that it was misinterpreted. It's a really interesting problem right now. And right now, we haven't found the solution to that. Like I said, what we're doing at the moment is interviewer, note taker, AI note taker. And until we feel confident in that last step, I think we'll continue to have a human note taker there as well. I think it's a super common problem. I don't think that there is a potential solution yet, because as designers, you don't want to divorce yourself from that feedback at all. I think the value for me is being in those sessions. So even if AI gets it wrong, you are there to correct it, you are there to understand, you are there to interpret, and then possibly make decisions if you're a designer as well. T, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I think spot on, Ames. I agree with you completely. I also feel like the more context you give AI, the better your outputs. I mean, they say garbage in, garbage out. So if you give it good garbage, no, I'm just joking. If you give it some good context, then your answers are more likely to be better. I think also humans hold a lot of context. We forget how smart we are actually, and we always have to be there to check. I think, especially when it comes to research, I don't think the human will ever be divorced from that process. So even if we are in a world where we've got those AI workflow automations, there always needs to be some sort of human intervention to check and make sure that we're not veering off and hallucinating. Yeah, I would say we've just got to cross check at this point until we feel confident.
Thank you. Just want to check something. Oh, okay. So a last question is from Caleb, and he asks, are there any real world examples of composable systems?
I actually don't, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. It's basically, yeah, like that analogy of the Lego kind of box. We're kind of plugging in different, almost like software, SaaS services together. So if you need an engine for your search, an engine for your personalization, an engine for your front end, that's basically how it all fits together. I can't think of any real world examples that I know of, but I do know in the tech space, a lot of companies are doing that right now in order to keep up with the landscape. Ames, I don't know if you want to add there.
I don't have any specific examples, but what I am just thinking is that it's quite a new experience. A lot of the e-commerce players in the South African context are quite old, so it is a bit of a rarity because you've now got to turn around the entire way of doing things. So I can't say for certain, but I would look at newer newer e-commerce people coming into the space. I don't know, for example, maybe Bash is looking at it a bit more. I do think it's going to be in any example where there's a new architecture that they've built from the ground up, it's going to be much more likely. I do think we can see it in the world though. So the other day when what was it that went down the other day that just like absolutely broke everything on the internet?
Crowdcast. No, not Crowdcast. It was Cloudflare. Yeah.
Oh, that's a really great example, right, of where other people are using APIs and starting to build in that way because everyone on the internet uses Cloudflare. What that means is when Cloudflare went down, all the Lego blocks across the internet that were using Cloudflare stopped breaking. I'm sorry, we can't give you a better example, but I think it's also something that requires a big turnaround, and there's not going to be super robust example that's in this space.
Sorry.
Sorry. Nikki, you just made everyone on the call check their phones.
The cons of having WhatsApp on your machine and not muted. Um, there's a follow-up question from Caleb on that one. So he says, right, could it be like how you can access Uber Eats on Uber now? But I kind of feel you already started answering that in some ways.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so because it's actually like a back end thing. So you would say like Uber Eats is a separate app and they've just plugged that into their app, which they've probably got some sort of composable architecture to be able to just bring their app into another app. So I wouldn't necessarily say that's that Uber Eats is, you know, the composable side of things, but I would definitely say composable enables that, if that makes sense. So it's more of a back end decision rather than the front end. I hope that helps.
I also just want to add, I did comment on Caleb's initial question with with two links to read. It provides a better understanding of composable commerce. One is a Salesforce link, and one is it's a, I think it's a 2 or 3 year old article, but it breaks down pros and cons and also provides a good understanding of composable commerce.
Thanks, Iggy.
Uh, so I think we are good. Thank you so much again, Amy and Theresa. I have